This episode of Tutia Bruja is sponsored by Floodwitch, dedicated to providing information that helps you build an ethical witchcraft practice by raising marginalized voices while reclaiming weird. This is Floodwitch. Check it out at floodwitch.com.
I can see you clearly. Tutia Bruja.
Hello, beautiful witchy humans. So as you can see, there's another episode of Tutia Bruja. By the way, I'm Bex Carlos, your host, in case you're new here. So yeah, I'm dropping 2 episodes this week. The first one was less, so if you've already heard that, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm dropping a second one for a couple of reasons. One, it is the anniversary of Stonewall this weekend. June 28th through July 3rd were the days in 1969 that a lot of Black and brown, queer and trans people fought back against the harassment that they were receiving from police. And, that's the reason we have Pride, because of a lot of key players like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Stormy DeLarviere. There were a lot of people who played a part in this, and these dates commemorate what led to Pride. We are very lucky in a lot of ways to have a lot of opportunities and privileges that queer people 51 years ago didn't have. However, I think that this Pride Month especially, we should focus on the fact that a lot of Black and brown, queer and trans people die at the hands of police and at the hands of other Black and brown people who are cis. Intersectionality has proven that it's possible to be the oppressed and the oppressor, and the levels of violence that people see are determined by their intersections. This Pride Month, I would ask you to think about the ways that you could be possibly oppressing trans or non-binary folk. One simple way to be able to recognize people when you meet them and to really just respect who they are is to ask for their pronouns. It's something very simple. I think that will clear any mix-up of how that specific person wants to be referred to. And it's a way of decolonizing from the Eurocentric binary. You know what I mean? It's something super simple you can do. Just like, hey, what are your pronouns? Tell them your pronouns. And, then it's known. That is a huge way that we could eliminate misgendering, which, is violence. All right. Today's guest is Christian Cintron. Christian is a queer individual who identifies as two-spirit, but he prefers the pronouns he, him. He's at the intersections of comedy and spirituality and created a class to help people who are using stand-up to work on shadow work. We get into a long conversation about intersectionality and how, as non-Black people of color, how to be able to have a place at the table. There are issues that we don't always know how to talk about without seeming anti-Black. It's an interesting conversation about how we can all try to have a little compassion and understand other marginalized people. So without further ado, I'm going to hop into the episode. Here it is. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. Estoy muy excited. Sorry, I just had to quote J-Lo. Because I'm Puerto Rican. ¿Qué pasó, huepa? I think that I'm in a uniquely intersectional position. When I did drag, I really kind of found that I identify as two-spirit. Because I think being raised mostly by women, I channel a lot of female energy and I channel my energy in the higher chakras in a way that a lot of men don't. And ironically, by doing drag, having my masculinity not questioned and challenged allowed me to get a more intrinsic understanding of my masculinity. And I do believe in my spiritual practice that all of us have an anima and an animus, and those two sides make up our spirit, and that there is the divine masculine, the divine feminine in all of us. And that translates to sociology. There's people who believe that we all have a masculine side and a feminine side. And so when attacked or threatened, we'll respond in certain ways specific to that gendered part of ourselves. Whoa, that was a lot of words. Sorry about it. And then just sort of spiritual practice. I mean, I identify as a little bit of everything. I'm an ominist. I believe that all religions, even the offshoot ones, must have some kernel of truth. And I just sort of believe that we come from everything, so we are everything. And I think that the relationship with that energetically kind of dictates our life on earth.
You see a lot of the shit that needs to be fixed in Latinidad because we need a lot of work.
I mean, low-key, it's like Cher in Clueless. I kind of just want to take everybody into the kitchen, rearrange some things, and then we could totally party with the Haitians and the Dominicans and the Puerto Ricans and the Black people and the white people and everybody in America, except Trump, because he touched children. What? Sorry about it. I'm messy. I'm from New York. I do not keep it under wraps. I just want to say this. What bothers me is the level of hypocrisy across the board. Integrity is something that I respect. I can respect you if you're a Republican and that's what you believe. But McCarthyism happened because they didn't want Russia in America, but Russia colluded in our election. How are you okay with that? There are people who call gay people pedophiles, or they're fighting for, like anti-abortion, but they're okay with the fact that like he touched children or there's children in cages. It's like, get it together. Like you need to like own your shit. And honestly, I think that speaking of intersectionality, that's kind of the thing. I think we all kind of need to like check ourselves. But then also, like, some of us can stand to be more vocal, because I think that one thing that I've really realized with the whole COVID crisis is how often I have been checked and defined and put in a box and told what race I am and who I am and how I should feel and how I should talk. And ain't nobody been asking about my family. I'd say maybe about like, I have as many family members who look Black and as many family members who look white, but I'm white presenting and I'm well spoken. And part of the reason why I'm well spoken is because half my family didn't speak the same language as me. So being understood is really important to me. My grandmother had a third grade education and she grew up in Puerto Rico, which was part of the US in 1920. So why the hell didn't she go to school? Sorry. Oof, I feel it. The spirit, the Puerto Rican is rising.
Puerto Rico has been let down a lot by the US.
It's very much just take, and not give back, which is why I feel like it's a modern day representation. And it's also like kind of a representation of the initial colonialism that defined this whole part of the world. I mean, I think Columbus landed in Santo Domingo first and not in Puerto Rico because his head is still there. They've been mad since then. So point of fact, Christopher Columbus. I mean, I know we should Snopes, check that.
But also, fuck Christopher Columbus, so it doesn't really matter.
The part, back to intersectionality, it's complicated because I do see it from both perspectives. Because I've been saying this since I was young. Because I went to a uppity liberal arts college because I was a smart kid and I got, scholarship money and financial aid. And I just saw how hard it was to find my people. Because like the gays, there was always something wrong with me. The Latinos, oh, you're too white sounding. Black people were really angry because I appeared white. Like I felt it in a weird way where I'm like, am I down with y'all? Am I not? And just realizing that honestly, it's all about how people can be triggered by us, but that's not our responsibility. My responsibility is not your feelings. And I feel like apropos of colonialism, because the Puritans founded America, we've been holding space for white feelings since then, and I'm over it. First it was the witches and the Native Americans, then it was slaves, then it was immigrants. Y'all just fucking, I'm sorry your dad didn't hug you, but like pray a little harder, Karen. I'm over it.
And that's the fucking truth. I am so sick of white feelings dominating the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It has to change.
But they're not even dealing with their feelings.
Well, white women. Like, white women will straight up have a son named Jimmy who will put frogs in the blender, and Jimmy just gets banned from the Xbox for like a month. They don't deal with shit.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's partly just because, like, there's a pathology and then there's also just, like, an intellectualization of their feelings where it just becomes society. Like, it's like, that's rude. And it's like, no more rude than you entering my personal space to give an unsolicited opinion, Karen. You know what I mean? And I feel like they're not met with somebody who's at their level. And finally, we're reaching generations where people are there to check them. And then they're not ready, and that's why everybody's reverting to babies and getting real messy, and that's why whatever.
Have you seen Latin History for Morons? The John Leguizamo?
Yeah, and it's weird. I love John Leguizamo. I think it's just one of those things where I'm just like, I feel like I need to be ready to watch it. I feel like sometimes it's like, I need to like self-care where I'm in a place to like take it all on. And I want to like honor it as opposed to just like, oh, I don't want to like casually watch, the history of our people. You know what I mean? But I also feel like there's something to be said for like processing what you can at the level that you can, as opposed to talking about things or like just entertaining things that you're not ready for, like just there's a lot there to unpack.
It's meant to be lighthearted, but one of the things that he says in the intro as it's starting is, one day there's going to be a little Latina who reads a lot of books and has a big mouth. We're getting to that time. A lot of us have read a lot of books. Well, we have fucking big mouths, and we're not like allowing ourselves to be made uncomfortable by white people anymore. Honestly, white people upset with me is my kink. Like, I love
That's chaos magic right there, boo. That's like nature finds a way. To quote Jeff Goldblum, nature finds a way.
There's something about just spewing so much knowledge and just having them be so mad.
White mediocrity has allowed white people to think they are more successful, more intelligent, and more together and more learned than they are, because white mediocrity does not get checked. And yet, Black or POC excellence is constantly questioned and constantly vilified and constantly picked at, where that's where a lot of our energy goes. It's literally energy vampires, y'all. I mean...
Yeah, because you can't be having the same conversation. No way! How do you know that? It's like, because I fucking read, bitch!
Yeah, I love the conspiratorial nature where they're just like, oh my God, what are you talking about? That's not a thing. Or when they try to like use their feelings. I mean, this is just having a little empathy, sympathy for the devil. They don't understand that they're reacting emotionally, but they're intellectualizing their feelings. And I'm like, don't start a fight that you can't finish. Because trust and believe, I speak 3 languages and I've read more books and I speak English better than you.
Yes, yes.
Vete pa'l Caribe, Hilton, because I don't have any fucking time for you. That was an old joke that my family used to say. Instead of saying vete pa'l carajo, they used to say vete pa'l Caribe, Hilton.
Queer people, we especially kind of see like a different type of magic, because I feel like magic was always a way for people to protect themselves against the colonizers, and it allows you to see more parts of it.
I also think that we understand the world better. And I think that when you look at how much energy is being mischanneled in the world in general, with there being so many patriarchies and so much solar energy, I like to use the term solar and lunar because I think that it triggers less people. And I also feel like it allows us to have a more deep conversation without having to like hold the hands of like fragile masculine men, because I think there's just as many women who channel solar energy and that intense competitive spirit. And there's a lot of more men who have that like soft, emotional, shadow, explorative lunar energy. And so like, I mean, that's just my jam. And that's one of the things that I talk about in the class that I teach, and just sort of in like trying to put that in my spiritual practice and what I share with the world, because it's important. I know as a man, as a cisgendered man, how often we don't take for granted that like a lot of behaviors are emasculating, and how we don't have the emotional toolkit to process that. And I'm not saying that that makes up for any of the shitty behavior of men, but I just think that, again, sympathy for the devil and just sort of having empathy for other people.
I'm trying to move away from that, though. My therapist and I did a lot of uncovering about how, like, that can at times be harmful, because you're trying to make excuses, maybe not make excuses, find rationale for people. And sometimes that can deter from your own emotions. But, compassion's important.
For the record, this doesn't mean that I don't crush men's spirit, because I mean, I know all the buttons to push. I mean, I know the spells to cast. It's just, I mean, since we're talking about intersectionality, I do think that we can have a little integrity in making space for it. It doesn't mean it needs to take up as much space. Even qualifying this is probably more space than it needs, but I just want to say that like you and your therapist are on the right track, because I do think that apropos of, intersectionality, a lot of Latinos and Asians are forced into this weird position where like you see both sides, but that doesn't mean that you should apologize for the bullshit. So like, I'm not here for like white apologists or people giving white people the benefit of the doubt when the dialogue is about how white people have oppressed and mismanaged America. Let's have that conversation. And then we can be like, okay, Jeff's dad didn't hug him and that's why he became a cop and all that shit. I'm in a better place emotionally because I went to the protest and I'm focusing my new moon energy on the world that I want as opposed to the world that I don't. I want justice and I want empathy and I want, love and light and all that jazz.
I'm really glad that you're feeling that way, because honestly, I've just been feeling so heavy and so exhausted by humanity, just because this has brought so many people out of the woodwork. I know that intersectionality is a very new philosophy. Like, it's only been around since like 1989. Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, you're the best. Intersectionality is a great way of having discussions, because it's true, not everyone sees everything at the same level. when you can really understand and really get to a point of like, oh, I have these privileges, that's when the world will become better.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I think that the privileged, oppressed dialogue, that was a game changer. Because I think then everyone can take a second, look inside, and see, how do I have privilege and how do I low-key oppress people? Because I won't lie, this is going to sound problematic. Don't shoot me. Don't write a vulture think piece. Don't get up in arms. But I think everyone in this country on some level has privilege and can afford to look at it. And I think what's challenging to be a not Black POC is that in the Black community, they will shut down a conversation on racism because they have it worse. And I'm like, but there's room for everyone at the table to be in the conversation. And I think more inclusive conversations allow us to make change, because diplomacy is the one thing that America was based on. And that's the one thing that has not been present in this administration, unlike any others. I mean, that is a privilege, just being able to just shut down any conversation about racism or just like pull the mic. I mean, it's challenging because it's like, well, how do you make space for kids in cages? You know what I mean? Like, it's not either or, it should be all. If you look at like how many people in America are white presenting, but not part of the problem because they were immigrants or they just got here. Like if you just got here from like some Eastern European country, you might have white privilege, but you're not directly responsible for the oppression of anyone.
People forget that although the conditions and the structures, the institutions and whatnot that have oppressed Black people in this country, many people who still live in this country for sure are more privileged than people living in developed nations. There are all these factors sometimes that limit people from understanding other people's perspectives. Sometimes as Americans, we forget how like our government has destabilized a lot of economies, and for people to have to leave that poverty, to leave that difficult life and to come here, that comes with a lot of trauma and intergenerational trauma that, you know, is a different type of trauma.
You know what I mean? Like, that's important to talk about, because I think that if Black people understood that, like, for example, as a Puerto Rican, I have more in common with people from Jamaica and Barbados than I do with Mexican people, or as much. But people have decided the color of your skin, the language you speak, and the shape of your eyes dictates the entire cultural experience you have. It's a challenge. I will throw this out. The only, like, speaking of intersectionality, it's challenging that all Asians from, like, 10 different countries and all Latinx people from like 20 different countries have to somehow all get along and exist as if we're all the same race, when even within our own countries, our own respective nations or areas, we all have our own problems, because there's internalized racism in Puerto Rico. There's Puerto Ricans who like make tons of money and their kids have opportunities. And then there's Puerto Ricans living in a hut and getting pregnant at 12 and staying on welfare because that's all they have access to and that's all they know, you know, because they don't even get exposed to things because their schools don't have books. Some Puerto Rican schools don't even have toilet paper, and they're part of the US. I mean, the fact that no one knows these things, so it's awkward to be this individual person being like, hey, I know you've heard of this, but like this is a thing, and trying to be part of the conversation. But like, how do you take up that space without pushing too hard as a marginalized person? How do you speak with pride without triggering people who your very existence might be triggering to them? I mean, I say do it anyway, but that's me.
I went to Spain 2 years ago. First of all, it was weird because you're interacting with the colonizer. You know, as a part of you, it's the oppressor in you. And honestly, none of it related. Like, none of it, like, there they call it tortilla, basically what would be like a fucking frittata, like an egg dish. Like, I was just like, nothing about this feels right. It's like, we just share a language.
This would blow people's minds. When people call us Hispanic, it is the equivalent of calling somebody who's from Jamaica, somebody who's from India, somebody who's from the US, and somebody from Canada, and somebody from England all English. And like, being okay with that. There would be 50 million reasons that somebody would say that, and like some Karen would be like, oh my God, but I'm not English, I'm a proud American. And it's like, cool, well then why are you just putting us all in a box where we have to all get along? It's like the fucking League of Nations just for us to agree that kids don't belong in cages, or and that Puerto Rico deserves relief, but it's like we can barely get our shit together. You know what I mean?
I fucking hate the term Hispanic. I don't use it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Also, Filipinos are Hispanic, which makes it even more complicated. Oh my God, wait, can I tell you a funny Tia anecdote? So like, I used to do drag and I had a friend who I did drag with, and like we were talking, and I'm like, you know, you're that Tia that everybody likes. And he's like, yeah, and you're that Tia no one knows they need. And he didn't say it as a compliment because I am that bitch. I joked around with the crystal shop that I worked at, and I was like, I feel like if I were to like give readings, it would just be me breaking it the fuck down. And I don't know what spiritual practice that is. I don't know if it's the New Yorker in me. I don't know if it's intersectionality. I don't know if it's spirit. But every once in a while, or even just drag, like reading a bitch, I will just break it the fuck down for somebody and then walk away. Like, my boy, I'm like, there you go, gift from the universe. If you don't like it, that's on you. Bye.
So I do tarot readings, and I will say that I always feel like I'm just the buffer between the cards. The cards say some really harsh shit. They're the bad parent, and I'm the good parent. And I'm like, well, based on what I'm seeing, you're not making the best choices right now.
Yeah.
You gotta figure it out. You can't just keep chasing this demonic dick.
Don't talk to me like I'm not in the room. I'm kidding.
Why is it the best dick attaches itself to demons? Like, why is that the thing, though?
It's because we're healers and we like damaged people.
No.
I'm like Peter Pan. I'm always picking up lost boys and I need to stop.
You and me both, sweetheart.
I know, right? A moment of silence for all the shitty men that are thankfully no longer in our lives.
Goodbye. It was very tragic that you died so young, but what I can do is live my life. So goodbye.
Oh my God. Did you ever see the movie Stardust?
No, I haven't.
There's this part where, so Michelle Pfeiffer plays like the witch queen or whatever, and she's like, you shall not see the star, touch it, hear it, taste it. And I'm like, that's me. I'm like, if you get on my bad side, and I'm like, and you're out. That's a wrap on you. Thanks. God bless you. Goodbye. Good work, everybody. That's a wrap on them. I think it's the most efficient way to energetically and emotionally disengage and take care of yourself. And then if they come back, that's the universe being like, okay, girl, you were wrong.
Yeah, I think so too. But I also think that like healers have to be very careful because false flames are real. Sometimes they're just trying to suck your energy dry.
That part.
It's a very hard place, you know, because it's like you want to help everyone, but then you realize that some people are just wretched to the core.
What helped me is that when you heal someone and you are energized and you are uplifted, that means it's healing. If you're drained, that means you're not setting spiritual boundaries, or that's not what it's about, or they're not even feeling it. And you just need to like, okay, boo, cool. Like I think it's interesting because as a New Yorker, I'm always good at disengaging. I'm just like, nope, no attention, no energy, no, like, vete pa allá. Like, and it's interesting because I'm very brusque and I'm very like dismissive, which is not whatever. I'm not the nicest person, but I feel like I'm a good person because I'm like, I'm not giving you my energy, and you asking for my energy is not going to be cute because you're going to put me in a place that I don't need to be in and you don't need to see. Like, that's me seeing the future. I'm like, I had a premonition. Get the fuck out of my face.
What has been a portrayal of witches that left you just really frustrated?
Ooh. Oh, that's so weird. I thought you were going to ask what was my favorite. And I was like, oh my God, so many. But worst. I don't know. Ooh, hold on. I mean, it's tough because like I feel like I always have a soft spot for witches. I mean, I won't lie, like I personally had some trouble with Sabrina because I thought like the new Sabrina was like really dark and bleak. And then they're attaching a lot of things to it, but I know where they were going and I let them do that. I'm trying to think of like problematic. I mean, ooh, that's a deep one. That's a deep dive. Let me think. This is just my tea, do with it what you will. I tend to only embrace an artistic appreciation point of view where I take on like what works for me, and then whatever doesn't work for me, I leave that to other people.
I feel you. I have a really big soft spot for witches too.
Because it's also female power.
It's all about female power. And the only issues, you brought up Sabrina. So Sabrina, I really have enjoyed thus far. I think that I worry sometimes because they are presenting various things about the occult. And I think sometimes people like dig into stuff and don't do research. But the only real issue I have is that a lot of the Black characters don't have a whole lot of depth. And I feel like they're just added as a sprinkle. Like, oh, look at this person of color and look at this person of color. And yeah.
Like Rochelle in The Craft. Like the fact that she didn't have parents and that like they didn't address her story at all. They were just like, racism is a thing. I guess to answer your question, I would say the lack of representation of our actual faiths and spiritual practices as they would relate to magic bothers me. And I guess on some level, I feel like, okay, this is gonna sound a little shady, but like I feel like Angela Bassett was a little messy in Coven. Oh yeah, Coven, maybe there was a lot of problematicism in Coven. Like, I liked it because I like, sassy dialogue, but I felt like it was a little messy and it was a little one note. Like, I love how they focus so much on the Axeman and what's her face that Kathy Bates played, like to incorporate New Orleans, but then all of the Black characters and entire Black religious faith and like Black witchcraft was just sort of glossed over.
Ryan Murphy's biggest problem is he introduces way too many concepts.
Yes.
It's so close to the end when you should be wrapping up storylines, and he doesn't. There was a lot that could have been done with the Queenie storyline.
She could have been a descendant of Marie Laveau or Tituba.
And it just felt so flat. And I mean, there were some badass moments, like when Madison Montgomery like flipped over that bus.
So good. And also like Lily Raby or what was her name? Misty Day, just bringing up Stevie Nicks in a way that I'm like, oh, Stevie. Because she's an OG witch. She was doing it before it was cool.
Yeah, but she keeps singing. Now we're going to talk about Stevie Nicks and how I feel about her.
No, but she didn't need to show up. But that's stunt casting, and that's him being a messy star fucker. Because Stevie Nicks didn't need to come out of retirement to fucking lip sync or sing some downcast song, because none of that had anything to do with magic and veils and stuff.
She is a big part of the fact that, a lot of people want to be out here being like, I'm a bohemian witch. I'm going to say, even though I know it's a slur, I'm a gypsy witch. And I'm like, stop using that term.
Yeah.
And it's all part of her aesthetic. And I feel like that's the thing that really bothers me is like she's a big role model with those New England witches and like Eurocentric witches and whatever. Everybody has their like aesthetic. But I'm also just like, maybe this is just me because like I get all the emotion and all the fucking drama with Fleetwood Mac, but they're not my fam.
I feel you.
Every time witches, Sharon Witch playlist, it has like Fleetwood Mac songs on it. And I'm like, this is not for me.
To quote The Color Purple, maybe God is trying to tell you something. And if you explore what you don't like about it, it might shift your perspective. I'm a comedian. A lot of the work that I do, I teach a spiritual stand-up comedy class. It's partly because I feel like comedy has become less about being uplifting. And I feel like when you look at a lot of uplifting comedians, like they went to a dark place and they're no longer around. Bill Cosby killed all that. Ellen has become a tool for capitalism. The world needs more levity. We need to laugh more and we need to feel joy. Witches of Eastwick. Have you seen Witches of Eastwick?
Yeah, I've seen.
Remember when they're like, Jane, laugh. And the idea that when you laugh, you fly. I feel like on some level, that's a metaphor, but I feel like on some level, it does help our spirit and our vibration fly and like level up. And so I don't know, that's the tea that I'm on.
Whatever.
I mean, I'm in no way telling you to listen to Fleetwood Mac, by the way. If it's not for you, dude.
I hope not, because I'm not going to do it. But no, tell me more about your comedy. I do really like the fact that you're combining like spirituality and comedy. Laughing is a really good medicine. Mm-hmm. It is. And how did that get started?
Well, so the best way to kind of describe it is just, it's funny. So like in my spiritual practice and just as a person, people are like, oh my God, you're an optimist. Oh, you're just all about this love and light bullshit. And I'm like, no, bitch, I became mistress of the dark. I've seen the dark side. My summer house is in the dark side. I just moved on. And so I just want to help the world with stand-up, which is something I've always kind of been good at and like loved. And I started doing stand-up in like around 2004 after I graduated from college. And then spirituality is just something that I love. And I feel like, stand-up comedy is shadow work. Stand-up comedy is processing your feelings. Stand-up comedy is editing the way you think and see the world, but also sharing your truth. And I think that can help people a lot. And I feel like it's helped me in channeling a lot of my energy before I even believed that magic was possible. You know what I mean? Like I can walk into a room and pull everyone's focus. And that's something I only learned from stand-up comedy and from standing in front of a bunch of strangers, bearing my soul and just being like, here you go. Wepa.
I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy, but I feel like I have to be quite a bit drunk. I have to be like actually crossfaded that day.
Well, I could help you, girl. I mean, the way, and I mean, I'm not overly pitching the class. I'm not about trying to like make money off of people. I'm trying to empower them. It's 4 classes in and out. Like, here you go. This is everything I know. Go out in the world, fly, bird, fly.
Yeah.
Because I think that we all need to feel empowered. And I guess as somebody who's always been marginalized and told you're too gay, you're too fat, you're too white, you're not white enough, you're not black enough, you're not indigenous enough, you're not vocal enough, you sound too this, you sound too that, you're too much, you're too extra. I'm like, pero ya, I'm just fucking being me. And I feel like I finally am in a place, through a lot of like spiritual work, therapy, self-work, deep exploration. I feel like I'm finally in a place where I can do that. And that's what I just want to share with people. Porque why not,
Honestly, I just want to see more brown people and black people out here speaking their truth. And I feel like comedy, unfortunately, is a place where you don't see a lot of that representation.
Mm-hmm. And then even if you do, there's pandering. Amy Schumer, who reaches like notoriety as a female comic, but by dragging women and dragging herself and doing comedy like quote unquote like a man. Like I just feel like you should be speaking your truth. And I think that that is what matters and helps people and does something for the community. But that's my tea. That's just that. Nobody asked my opinion, but I'm just sharing porque tú sabes.
Honestly, this conversation has just like flown by. The last question I will ask you is, what is your favorite magical tool?
Oh my God, I'm down with crystals. It's so basic of me, but like I've loved crystals since I was a little kid. And like I know why I was drawn to some and not others, and like why just like they had this deep resonance with me. And I think it's on some level because connecting with the earth can be grounding, but grounding in a different kind of way and at a different vibrational level. Because I know that like, it's funny because this whole COVID crisis kind of showed me that like chaos is my comfort zone. Like when all this happened and everybody was flipping out, I was doing my taxes. I was like, oh my God, now I can finally concentrate. I was like, now that everybody feels how I feel every day, I'm chill as fuck. And so I think that like just being able to like connect with the earth in that way. And like, I don't know, they're pretty. It's pretty and colorful.
They're cute and they're colorful, and I like all of that. I think for me, it's that there's so many of them. There's something about like not knowing. So it's like I'll look at a crystal and be like, I don't know, maybe a rose quartz. The not knowing kind of like gets me. So I'm just like, fuck it. And it's like I'm that kid that knocks over the Monopoly board. But I just got a book.
What I like to think of is if a crystal is drawn to you, just let it be drawn to you. And then when you find out what the spiritual significance is, that's the message for you.
Okay.
And I like to be clear. So like I'll just go to a crystal shop and then if I touch something and it's like I'm going home with you, I look up in the Crystal Bible, that's my favorite book, and I look it up and I'm like, oh, what does this mean? I'm like, oh shit, I needed this. This was not what was not aligned. This is what I'm working on. But that's also just kind of like my tea with spirituality in general. Like because I think that like you said, like I wasn't guided, and being raised Christian, it was very like magic is real, but don't fuck with that. Just like letting the universe speak to you and honing your intuition is valuable. And if now's not the time for Fleetwood Mac and crystals, do you? Wait, hold on. I just have to say, I want to be with you everywhere. I'm kidding.
Will you go your own way?
Hey, girl, stand back in the middle of my room. I'm not here for you. I'm kidding. But it's all right. It's all right. I can keep going. That's like a little improv trick, was just finding ways to insert song lyrics into things. I did improv, so there's like every once in a while, I'll do like somebody was like, "Oh yeah, she's a dancer." I'm like, rhythm is a dancer, and it's also a source of passion, and you could feel it everywhere. See, that's how I fuck with white people. Is it's like, hey, I'm letting you know that I'm smarter than you, but it's cute, so you're laughing. You know what I mean? Okay, just real quick, I just want to add this because like the problematicism of identifying as a white witch, but like not identifying with white culture, like I feel like that's sort of the thing. Like I like to stay in a place of love and light, and then if you fuck with me, it's like fucking Emma Frost, White Queen from the X-Men, cold as ice and like sharp as a knife. But like, yeah, like I just like to keep it like that. Like keep it light, keep it cute. Yeah, like, hey, I may or may not be mocking you, but like stay woke, bitch.
Maybe if you read a little more, you'd understand.
Mm-hmm. Sorry that you didn't have a library card or whatever, Say about it.
Where can everyone keep up with you? What are you working on? What do you got planned in the future?
So I write freelance. So I write for a couple of different spots. There are a few of my articles on Magic LA. That's Magic with a K LA. You can also find a page for my stand-up class there. And then you can also, there's a Facebook page, facebook.com/standupforyourpower for the number 4. And then on Instagram, I'm Psychic Scream. That's SIGHKICKSCREAM. Porque I like puns, and again, I like to say it would be easier if it was just my name, but then it wouldn't be as fun.
It wouldn't be you if it was just your name.
I know. It's that chaos magic. It's messy.
All right, so that was the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Christian's so funny, and it was just such a blast to have this conversation, so I hope that you got something out of it. Honestly, intersectionality, I know it's such a new topic, but it just makes so much sense, and it really does help explain, the levels of violence that different people see and encounter, and how we can contribute at time, even unknowingly, to that violence. So, thank you for listening. All the ways to support Christian are in the show notes. And remember, you can follow me at Bexby Caston, follow the podcast at Tu Tia Bruja. Thank you for listening. If you haven't, rate and review the show. Really appreciate it. And one final thing, because, I don't like witchy playlists that have Fleetwood Mac on them. Obviously, I've made that very clear. I've included some stuff that I enjoy just because, you never know when something might speak to you. I like to have high vibe energy, whether I'm, brushing my teeth, working out, or even just cleaning up the apartment. So if you're of that same kind of mind where you want that music that's really going to hype you up, I think this will be for you. So a couple of different ones are in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Toulouse, TCP. That is a little house panther. That's a purring house panther. Yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to hang out with my cat. I'll talk to you later. Bye.